Mind-Body Connection podcast.
The body
and mind. With your host, Dr. Phil Parker. Hi, and a very warm welcome to this episode of the Mind-Body Connection with me, your host, Dr. Phil Parker. First thing I'd like to say is thank you so much for subscribing, listening, rating, and commenting on iTunes and various other places about how you feel about this podcast. The response has been amazing, tremendous, and that really, really helps to boost it in the rankings, and therefore it shows up. Other people get to find it who may not ever stumbled across it. So thanks for the support you've been given in this podcast. And if you haven't done that yet, then please do go subscribe, iTunes, rate it, leave a review. It'd be fabulous. The purpose of this episode is I'm going to shift slightly away from the interview I was planning to put in, because I thought there's some common themes maybe it would be useful to set up before we carry on with the interviews, like explaining what placebos are a bit and how they work and some interesting stuff around them. So it's going to be a relatively short episode. Then the other thing I thought was, as I was listening back to some of the interviews, the researchers we talked to, particularly in this part of the series, some really clever stuff, some of it a little bit complicated, and a lot of it is focused on interesting things or possibly what clinicians could do. And I know a lot of people listening aren't clinicians, they just be interested in what can I do to my health as a result of learning about the mind-body connection and the placebo effect. So I'm going to intersperse the longer interviews with short little clips of me talking about some stuff that you can practically do to put some of this stuff into your life and into your health. So that's what we're going to do at the end of today as well. So first of all, a little bit about placebos. First of all, because placebos will be mentioned a lot, placebos are where you give something, like some kind of intervention. It could be a pill, could be surgery, could be injections, and there is a response to it which is nothing due to the actual chemicals. So it may be a dummy pill that has nothing in it, and it will have an effect. And what's interesting about this is when people do drugs trials, they know that there's always going to be some kind of effect of expectation, just getting an intervention, getting a pill, getting some medicine. And so randomized controlled trials, which you'll hear mentioned a lot, are ones where you divide a group of participants up randomly and you give half of them one intervention and half of them another intervention, so you can compare the difference. And one of the things they classically will do is give the new drug versus a sham or placebo drug. And when you think about it, what they're doing there is they're saying, we know that some effect will be caused by just taking the drug, and what we've got to do is show that the drug is slightly better. So that's the kind of mechanism of the trial. But it's another interesting part of the conversation which says, we know giving a pill will absolutely make a difference, and what we've got to do is demonstrate that the real pill will do slightly better than that. It doesn't have to be much better to get past the FDA approval. So that says that there's a real awareness, even within the toughest kind of most skeptical scientific minds, that there is an effect, the placebo response, as a result of taking just any kind of intervention, any kind of pill. Another interesting thing, which Irving Kirsch mentioned right at the end of his interview, was that there's a different hierarchy of placebo responses. So certain things will tend to produce a bigger placebo response. So if you take a white pill, like some kind of pain relief, and it's a placebo, it won't be as effective as if you take just the white ordinary generic pill. Will be not as effective as if you take a branded one. So like in England you have Nurofen, which is a kind of brand, and it's all shiny, and they spent millions on packaging, and it costs more in the shops. This has got exactly the same chemical constituents. There's no difference between the paracetamol that you buy, in an unbranded box that's really cheap, or the Nurofen or whatever brand you may buy, which is actually on average about 5 to 10 times as expensive, containing the same chemistry. What they found in research is if you take the branded one, you will actually get more pain relief, you'll get more effect, even though there's nothing different in the pill. It's purely because we like the packaging, we've been sold it so many times through advertising. Another interesting one is if you give someone a pill, so oral medicine, it's not nearly as powerful as if you inject them. So injecting is more powerful. And it appears to be, some of the research that, again, Irvin did, was that surgery is more important, have more value as a placebo effect. And then the idea is probably because people are going, well, that was a big proper intervention. If you take a pill, it's a pill. If you have an injection, that's a major bit of medicine. And if you have to go under general anesthetic or have some kind of anaesthetist work on you so you can have the surgery, and then you wake up with a scar, you really feel that something's happened. So there's huge placebo effects. And amazingly, they do have to do trials where they compare real surgery to sham surgery, pretend surgeries, where people go under anesthetic and they give them an incision. They don't do any work. And the reason they have to do that, it kind of almost seems unethical, is to kind of go, is the procedure making the difference? Is the actual work we're doing when we do the surgery making the difference? Or is it the whole experience of going under anesthetic and waking up with a scar? So really interesting stuff going on there. The other thing, again, Irving mentioned was that, and if you're interested, there's a book I've written called The Do. There's another book by Dan Merman that's really worth reading, which you'll find in the show notes. There's a lot of research about what colour the placebo makes a difference. So in certain countries, for instance in Italy, if you have pills that are blue, particularly if you're a man, it will have a more strong effect. And they think this is possibly due to the Italian football team being called the Blues, and it being kind of linked to masculinity and strength and stuff. And in different countries, different colours make a difference. So blue doesn't work in other countries to the same extent. The size of the pill makes a difference. The shape, the capsule. If you have a capsule pill, it tends to be more effective than just an ordinary powdered chalky one. So there's all sorts of stuff going on that affecting what's happening to the medicine. Now, if you have medicines, it will tend to have more of an effect than if you have the placebo. But we've got to work out how much of this is due to the placebo effect. How much is it our internal thoughts and experience generating this? And then, of course, the really interesting question is, how can we switch that on? And that's what a lot of my work has been, is looking at, well, what makes a difference? How do we get people to enhance this natural ability they have to take a pill and to create a bigger response than other people? Or sometimes to take a pill that contains nothing and create a response as if they were taking the real medicine. So those are all kind of interesting conversations that you'll see showing up within the interviews. I also, I think, mentioned nocebo effects. So this is where pretty much the same thing happens, but in this case, people get effects from drugs which are the side effects. So they'll get a pill which is a pretend pill, and they will get a headache as a result of taking this pretend pill because that's one of the side effects. Again, showing the power of the mind-body connection. And again, this is a very interesting thing because nocebo effects are not just limited to taking a pill. They can be as a result of what the doctor says. So if they say, oh, if you take this, there's a good chance you'll have side effects, then you're more likely to have them. Or when you undergo an operation and they say, look, I have to tell you, if we do this operation, then your leg might fall off as a result or something, that starts to create a response. In every conversation in healthcare, and this again is an area I'm particularly been looking at over the years, whenever a doctor says something, it will have, any therapist says something, it will have a huge impact on us. And particularly if it's something that's related to health or illness. It seems that when that occurs, there's a change in our physiology. So this is the practical exercise I'm going to move on to today. So there's some work by Richter and Weiss, where they got some guys and they gave them, they got a set of cards, and on one set it was like grocery items like avocados, washing powder. In the other set of cards, just written cards, was words related to pain. And they mixed the cards up and then randomly gave the subjects a card whilst they were in an MRI scanner. Okay, so they were scanning their brain to see blood flows, as functional MRI, see the activity of the brain. If they drew a card that just said avocado, bananas, you didn't see much activity. But if they drew a card that referred to pain, you saw a lighting up of the areas responsible for processing pain signals. And what they say is, it's really important to know this, that it means that if we start to use language that is related to symptoms and related to problems, we are very likely to be triggering the neurology of the problem. So triggering the parts of the brain that process those symptoms, increasing both the symptoms and very possibly having an effect on our physiology. So, tip for today is to start, if you have any health issues, is to start changing your language. So if you have pain, then lose that word as much as you can and start to refer to it in the opposite way. Now, interestingly, the opposite way is not to say no pain, because as soon as you say the word pain in that sentence, it will again light up those parts of your brain. And when I've taught people this, and I've taught this all over the world to doctors and clients, and patients and pain consultants, people who are involved either professionally in working with pain or disease, or if you're a client, a person, and that's what's going on in your life, they very often find it really difficult to find the opposite of pain without using the word pain. So quite often they'll say stuff like relief. Now the word relief naturally brings with it its friend pain, because it's relief from. So just for a moment, I'd like you to think about, if you have an issue, what would be the opposite word that does not reference in any way the problem word? So if your issue is pain, the answer is not no pain. The answer is not relief. The answer is not less pain. The answer needs to be something like deep comfort, or moving easily. Well, what else would be a good word? And training your brain to use the words that you need is really, really important. It seems that it has a very profound effect on activation of pathways that will directly impact your physiology. So whatever your issue is, whatever's going on in your life, start to notice, be aware of what are the conversations you're having inside your head. You know, we all talk to ourselves. How many of the conversations are negatively focused words? And a lot of them will be, because that's how we talk, about problems. We focus on the problem. How many conversations are you having with other people that are using those words? Because they will also trigger that neurophysiology. How many conversations when you go to your doctor, your GP, your specialist, or your therapist are about those words? Now in research, this is also a nightmare, because when people generally do research, they have to use forms that are very standardized, what's called validated forms. And many of the forms are absolutely negatively focused. So a classic one is called the Visual Analog Pain Scale. So it's even got the word pain in the actual title. And it asks you this question. It says, I'd like you to rate on this scale. It has a little line, one end and another end. It says, rate on the scale how the severity of your pain. Now the word severity directly relates to pain, as does the word pain. So I've now said it 3 times. And then on the scale, one end of the line, it says the worst pain imaginable. Now, the worst pain imaginable, in order to know what that is, you have to think through your life to find a time when you had the worst pain imaginable. As soon as you do that, again, you're firing up these neural pathways about pain. And at the other end of the scale is the word no pain. Now, as soon as you say the word no pain, again, you're triggering the neurology. So even in that very short, very well-respected scale, there are lots of opportunities to be triggering the neurology that actually we need to be quietening down. Now, I must apologize if you're somebody and you've been listening and you do have these symptoms. I've said it far too many times. So instead, start thinking about comfort. Start thinking about, when were you at your most comfortable at any point in your life? All those things will help to settle your nervous system. So I hope that's a useful starting point for you. to think about how can we practically put some of this into our lives, into our health. I'll be doing more stuff on this. I'm going to be looking at things like how we use our language in different ways to change how powerful we feel in the process of change. I'll be looking at some research into how being grateful and compassionate makes a difference, how the words we say may have an impact on stuff like heart disease. Some very interesting research on that. We'll be looking at how many extra years you might get of healthy, happy life if you're happier than other people. So lots of kind of things that you can just take away and think, right, okay, in this vast field, what can I do that will make a difference? Little things that will make a difference. So I hope that's useful for you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like discussed, then again, please do email them, info@philparker.org. See you guys soon. Bye now. The Mind Body Connection podcast.
The body
and mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do subscribe to us on iTunes, like it, review it, and share it. The more people know about this, the better. And don't forget to join our podcast mailing list by going to philparker.org/yes, and you'll get extra stuff, bonus material, and program notes. See you there.